when people have good weeks. Today we're going to talk about she's one of my favorite women in the Bible for many reasons, but I really like this woman. I think had I lived during her time, I think her and I would have been friends. There's a lot about her that I honor, and I just think she was one of those people that got handed kind of a rough deal, but yet didn't stop believing, kept praying, and just really, really sought God, even when people thought she was crazy. So anybody want to guess who my character is? You're not allowed to guess, David. You saw my notes. Anybody? Who do you think it is? There aren't a lot of women in the Bible. Come on. And I'll give you a guess. It's not Mary, and the answer isn't Jesus. So, yes. No. Come on. Just name a woman. Not Ruth. That's my niece's favorite book. Oh, Esther. Sorry, Esther's her favorite book. Yes. I do like Ruth, though. She's mentioned in the lineage of Jesus. Hannah. Right. It's Hannah. David? Vincent. So bad. It is Hannah. I saw somebody back there mouth Hannah, but I wasn't going to go, what? Pardon? Love Hannah. A little background on Hannah. Hannah is a favored wife. We're going to find her prayer in 1 Samuel chapter 2. We'll go there in a minute. But Hannah was a favored wife. Her husband loved her deeply. But like a lot of women back then, there was second wife. And second wife was a woman named Peninnah. Husband's name was Elkanah. Elkanah. And then the wife's name, the second wife, was Peninnah. And Peninnah was mean. She was mean. She was a bully. Hannah wanted nothing more than to have a child. And her husband, being a God-fearing Jew, would go up to Shiloh to worship at the mountain and to present sacrifices once a year to the Lord. And he would take his families and both his wives. And when Elkanah was not looking, Peninnah would attack Hannah and tell her that she was worthless, and make it so much so that Hannah couldn't eat. Peninnah was a woman who knew how to use her tongue to carve people up. Can I tell you something? God does not like bullies. He doesn't like when we use our words to harm people. And Hannah was very misunderstood. Her husband one day says to her, "Am I not enough? Am I not enough? Am I not worth 10 sons? Am I not worth more than what you could ever ask for?" Because he just loved her so much, but he didn't understand her. He didn't understand her desire to have a child. And it wasn't that he wasn't enough. It was that she wanted more. And sometimes there's a mistake. Sometimes we think when somebody's unhappy, we think it's somehow our fault, that we're not enough. It's not true. Sometimes it's just there's more, and it's not personal. And with Hannah, it wasn't personal, but she was so misunderstood that even the priest, God's anointed, thought she was drunk. Because she came to the wall and she was praying, but she wasn't praying like normal people pray, in that she was like, out loud and posturing. She was crying and sobbing and praying with just her mouth moving, so he couldn't even hear words. And he, like, you disgrace God by coming drunk. And not one time does she fight back. Not one time does she hit back. She doesn't say to the priest, "You're a moron. I'm upset and I'm seeking God. She says she honors him. She says, no, my Lord, this is not what's happening. I'm so desperate for God to move. And because Eli saw her desperation, he blessed her and said, may God answer your prayers. And she went home. She got pregnant. And then when her husband went to go to Shiloh again, she said, let me stay because I'm going to wean our son and then I'm going to give him to the priests because he belongs to the Lord. I love Hannah. Hannah's prayer is full of rejoicing. So let's read. 1 Samuel chapter 2. Then Hannah prayed and said, my heart rejoices in the Lord. In the Lord, my horn is lifted high. And horn there means strength. My mouth boasts over my enemies, for I delight in your deliverance. Remember, she'd been picked on because she didn't have children, and now she was given a child. There is not one holy like the Lord. There is no one besides you. There is no rock like our God. Do not keep talking so proudly or let your mouth speak such arrogance. For the Lord is a God who knows, and by him deeds are weighed. The bows of the warriors are broken, but those who stumble are armed with strength. Those who were full hire themselves out for food, but those who were hungry hunger no more. She who is barren has borne 7 children, but she who has many sons pines away. The Lord brings death and makes alive. He brings down to the grave and he raises up. The Lord sends poverty and wealth. He humbles and he exalts. He raises the poor from the dust and lifts the needy from the ash heap. He seats them with princes and has them inherit a throne of honor. For the foundations of the earth are the Lord's. Upon them he has set the world, and he will guard the feet of his saints. But the wicked will be silenced in darkness. It is not by strength that no one prevails. Those who oppose the Lord will be shattered. He will thunder against them from heaven, and the Lord will judge to the ends of the earth, and he will give strength to his king and exalt the horn of his anointed. Hannah's prayer is full of rejoicing. Rejoicing is a source of strength. It's a source of honor. It's a source of success. It is really hard to look down or to be occupied by things that are not important when you are rejoicing. When you set your mind that I'm going to rejoice in the Lord, when you set your mind that I'm going to be thankful in the Lord, when you set your mind that I am going to choose to honor the Lord and to serve him, no matter what is happening in life, there you find strength. For the joy of the Lord is my strength. When you set your mind to rejoicing in the Lord, there is honor in that. Because if you are rejoicing in the Lord, you cannot get involved in things that are dishonorable to God. When you rejoice in the Lord, you actually find success in life. Because success in God is not measured by the amount of money you have or the house you own or the car you drive or what your children do or even what you do. Success in the Lord is simply being with him. And when we rejoice in the Lord, there is so much more that is happening. And our eyes get lifted. Circumstances should not diminish our joy in the Lord. So many people face so many storms. But joy is not contingent upon what is happening in your life. Joy is a choice that you make every day. Today, I'm going to choose joy. Today, I'm going to look around and I'm going to find the things that make me joyful, that make me happy, that make me thankful. When we choose joy, we choose honor. When we choose joy, we choose strength. When we choose joy, we choose success. Are you tracking with me? Her acknowledgement that God is bigger is just like what I preached about a while ago, when we take our thumb and we put it right in the line of view so that all we ever see is our thumb and we don't see anything beyond that. So this week was the week to move my mom out of her apartment. It's the end of a chapter for my mom. We just get great news all the time. And by great news, I mean not news anybody wants to ever hear. So, and for God's divine purpose, we are very thankful she was actually in the hospital. So when we had to move her, there were no fights because she didn't want to keep everything. We kind of let her believe that one day she's going to live on her own, with the knowledge that it just isn't going to happen. We got news that her kidneys are working at 28%. Her liver's completely shut down and her heart is failing. We won't know more until we see a specialist, but things don't look good. So I was talking to my mom yesterday on the phone, and I was going grocery shopping, and she's like, "Oh, don't let me stop you." And I'm like, "Really, Mom? I think a conversation with you is more important than the peppers I have to pick up," or whatever it was I was getting. And while I was talking to my mom on the phone, and this is why I love my mom, she's telling me about all the things that she's going to do. She's like, "So I'm going to go, when I stay with Jamie, I'm going to like set up my room, and I'm going to get new bedding. So I'll have a nice comfy bed, and it'll be really pretty. And so when people come and visit, I won't be embarrassed because I'll have nice bedding." When I go to May's, it's a smaller room, but that's okay because they're going to let me take a chair, and so that when people come, I can visit in the living room with them, and they're going to buy me new pajamas so I look nice when people come. There are a lot of things that are happening in my mom's life, but my mom chooses joy. And she doesn't want to talk about what's happening in life, not because she's afraid of it or she's ignorant. She just thinks that conversation should always be about joy. Because she doesn't let the thumb become bigger than God. And there are other women who are mentioned in the Bible before Hannah, 3 in fact, that are mentioned as being barren, and God gives them children, but in their barrenness they sin. The first one is Sarah. God says, "Hey, Sarah, you're going to have a kid." You know what she does? She laughs. She laughs because she fails to see that God is the God of the impossible. And her husband had devised a plan. She was going to give her handmaiden, and she was going to have a son through her handmaiden, and we all know how that turned out. And if you don't know how that turned out, go back and read Genesis. Genesis is actually a really cool book to read. There's lots of intrigue, better than a soap opera, I'm telling you. But Sarah laughed. She didn't believe that God was going to do what he said he would. Then there was Rebecca. And Rebecca was Isaac's wife. And they were married for many, many, many years, and she didn't have children. And then she got pregnant, and all of a sudden she's worried because there's things that are happening. And it says that she goes to the Lord and said, "Something's not right here." And God's like, "Relax. You have 2 countries within you, 2 nations within you, and they're warring. You're going to be fine." She didn't trust in the plan that God had. She didn't trust that God was doing something greater than what she could see. And then we come to Rachel. So Rebecca was Isaac's mother, or Isaac's wife. Rachel was Jacob's wife. And Rachel couldn't have children. And she was the favored wife. She was the beautiful one. She was the one that he wanted from the beginning. And she could not have kids. And so she gave her handmaiden time and time and time again. And when she finally was able to have children, she gave birth to Joseph and Benjamin. Jacob's favorite sons, Israel's favorite sons. But she didn't trust God. Hannah trusted God. She went to God time and again, time after time after time after time. And she rejoiced in God irregardless, but she poured out her misery to God. She allowed him to hear her, and she allowed for him to move. She didn't have a plan. She didn't tell her husband to do something he shouldn't. She didn't laugh when he made promises. She just simply believed that if I come to the Lord, because the Lord is good, he's going to give me the desires of my heart. And she trusted that God was able to meet what she needed. Hannah is confident of God's defense. She's confident in the God that she serves. It is the words that we use that we will be judged on. Time and time again, Scripture talks about how God judges our words. 45 times. Do you have that next one there? Those are all the scriptures where God talks about words, that whether words are going to bring life or they're going to bring death, whether our words are going to take us to the grave or they're actually going to encourage somebody else. God is very, very serious about how we choose our words. Hannah lived with a woman, Peninnah, who didn't use her words properly. In fact, I hear it all the time. It's so funny. I've been alive for 45 years, and the way people raise children is so different. When I was a child, it was not uncommon to see somebody get a little smack on their rear end if they were misbehaving in public. I never misbehaved in public because I was always embarrassed when other kids did, and I never wanted to do that. But I also had the death stare parents that was like, yeah, you just wait. And you knew. Like, you didn't want to go home, right? Like, you were going to stay out as long as you could, because when you went home, there was one time I don't remember what I did, but I remember it was pretty bad. And so my dad sent me up to my room to wait until he was ready to come up and administer the Board of Education to my seat of learning. And I knew this was coming. So I put on every pair of underwear and every pair of pants that I could find. And it didn't help me. It did a funny thing because it made my dad laugh, but it made him angrier because I was being disobedient, right? And so what would have been probably a very normal situation was not so normal after that. But God is very intentful on how we use our words. And words, the Bible tells us words bring either the life or words bring the death. And just think about what that means. It means if I talk to somebody and I honor them and I encourage them and I lift them up, are they walking away from me feeling encouraged and strengthened and maybe a little bit better? Or if they come to me and I tell them that they're being stupid, or they need to be smarter, or work harder, or be better, because let's be honest, this is a Chinese church, and how do we help people? We tell them what's wrong with them. Right? Come on, you know it. Let me help you. You need a new haircut. Right? No, you don't. You don't. But growing up in a Chinese home, that's what my dad would do. So often I hear his voice, and it's not a nice voice in my head, right? Because what he chose to do was not to speak life over me, but he chose to speak death. And God takes that very seriously. In fact, so much so that Hannah prays about it. In her prayer, she mentions that you're not going to stand. You got to be careful what you say because God is listening. And it's true. God hears all things. He knows all things. He sees all things. And there is no evidence that I read anywhere that Hannah ever fought back. So when Peninnah did what she did, I don't ever read that Hannah ran off to Elkanah. I don't ever read that she went and tattled on her or told somebody else. I only read that she took it to herself and then went to the Lord. When the priest Eli calls her drunk and insults her, when she's so in the midst of her pain and her sorrow and she's seeking God, I don't read that she's like, you're a moron. I read that she very graciously says to him, "No, sir, I am just seeking God. I am so desperate for God to move in my life." Hannah does not fight back. And I honor that, because my first instinct when somebody says something to me or does something to me is, really, gloves are off. When I have a sister who's really good at just picking that right time to tell me that I'm being disloyal or I'm not being obedient to God, my first reaction is, who do you think you are? My second reaction is to shut up, Catherine, and listen to what the Holy Spirit is saying. But my first reaction is always fight. I am a fighter. It's not a great thing sometimes. But Hannah allowed the Lord to deal with her enemies. Peninnah's biggest thing against Hannah was that Hannah's husband loved her more, which is why this whole plural marriage thing doesn't work for me, right? One man, one woman, end of story. And so what happens is Hannah goes, she gives birth to her son, and now Peninnah has nothing to say because Hannah can now have children. And Hannah's prayer reminds us that those who truly seek God, he will not forget them. How many of you ever prayed and said, "You remember me, God? I'm right here. Remember? Hi. Hello. Yoo-hoo." Anybody have those moments in life? God does not forget you. If he knows every hair on your head, he knows you. He knows where you are. Hannah was a woman of grace. And Hannah's prayer is a reminder of God's great power. People fail. News bulletin, you are going to be let down by people in your life. Happens. Some of you just got married this summer. Yay. Calvin, Anita, Dina, and David. You're going to let each other down. Just letting you know. It's going to happen. It may have already happened. It's going to happen. Because people fail. Ask people who have been married for a while. In encouraging ways, people who are married for a while tell them the truth. People fail. My mom is a great lady. I love her, but she failed me in a lot of ways. We have a complicated relationship. But I honor her and I love her. My sisters I adore, but they failed me. They've hurt me. People fail. God is not a respecter of ability, because he can use anything and change anything. It doesn't matter who you are or who you think you are. God can use anything. One of my favorite stories, and I will preach on it one time, is when Moses is talking to God and Moses is telling God what he does not have. And God says, "What's in your hand?" Because God will use what's in your hand. And what was in his hand was a stick that he parted the Red Sea with. Just a stick. No magic. Just a stick. God is not does not honor people because of abilities. He honors them because they're usable. There's a difference. And oftentimes he calls people who seem to have little to no ability because they're usable. The rain falls on the just and the unjust. One of the hardest questions people ask all the time is, how come good things happen or bad things happen to good people? Because God is just and he gives everyone free will. And sometimes people choose bad things and the reflection of that affects us. Sometimes we have to remember that God is good in spite of what we live in spite of what we go through. Because God will let the rain fall on both the just and the unjust. Don't look to what other people have. Be thankful for who you are and what God has given you. Hannah's prayer reminds us that those who truly seek him, he doesn't forget, but he also gives strength. He also gives strength to endure whatever it is he's calling you to endure. He gives strength that every day you will wake up, every day you will live life, and every day you will fall asleep, because he will give you strength to endure. But also in Hannah's prediction, there's a prophetic nature, and it's at the end. It's the last part of her prayer. And some people believe that when Hannah was praying, that she was talking about David, because Hannah, of course, Samuel becomes the one who anoints David as king. But Hannah is not talking about David. She's talking about Christ. Because Hannah knew that God had a bigger plan than just her having a baby. Sometimes we forget that. Sometimes we think this is our home and that we live and die on this rock, but we don't. We have a new home. We have a better home. This is just a playground. The home is much better. And so we have so what? And this is everybody's favorite part of when I'm preaching, the so what questions, because they know it's almost time to go home and eat. She gave her first, she gave her best, and she gave her son. And every year she would visit her son and she would make a cloak and she would take it to him. And Eli would bless her. And because Eli blessed her and Samuel was born, Eli blessed her, and she actually went on to have 3 more sons and 2 daughters. She gave her best. She gave her first. Which reminds me, we didn't do offering. That was on both of us. Okay. Lawrence, don't let them out until they give offering. We're just going to have the ushers stand at the back at the end of service, and you can just pass your offering as you go, okay? Lock the doors, Lawrence. Just kidding. Do we give our best? Do we give our best when we come to the Lord? I'm not talking about necessarily tithing. What about our energy? What about our worship? Do we take time to pray? Do we give our best time to pray, or do we pray when we're so tired and we have nothing else that we can do but repeat our prayers over and over again? I remember my mom was, we were just watching her. She wasn't well, and we had just started going to church as a family. I had just gotten saved, and so we were in there, and my mom fell asleep while she was praying. And I remember, and I was with her in the morning when she woke up, and all I hear is, "Amen." And she said, "Oh, I was praying all night." I'm like, "I'm sure you were." Do we give God our best? Do we allow God to vindicate us, or do we choose to act with no grace? I was at a going away thing, and people were sharing stories about me, which I really hate, because you never know where they're going to go. But one stood up and said, you know, my first and funniest memory of Pastor Catherine was we were doing a VBS, and some child came up and said, "So-and-so called me a name." And she said to them, "And I do this. Is it true?" "No." "Are you what they say you are?" "No." "So why are you telling me?" "It doesn't matter what they say. Is it true?" "No." "Then it's not true." Sometimes we don't allow God to work. We want to vindicate ourselves quickly. We feel that we need to defend ourselves when we feel attacked. We feel that we have to tell people how good we are. You don't need to tell anybody anything. God is your defender. Because if what they're saying isn't true, does it really matter? The kids never liked it when I did that. Still do it though. Very mean person. And the last one is, do you let the devil steal your joy? Or do you rejoice in the Lord? Do you count your blessings? Last night I have leadership meeting at my house, and I have bear hair all over my house. So I was cleaning my house, and I have one of those Google Play, you know, the okay Google tell me whatever. I don't have it. Sam had an extra one, so he put it down in the basement. And the only thing I ever ask it is what the weather is, so I know how to dress, and to play music. And so I had some beautiful worship music on, and as I'm cleaning my house with my mop, and I'm thinking about my mom and all the things that are happening in my personal life, and a song came on, and it was a reminder that I just needed to worship. And so down went my mop, up went my hands, and it didn't last long. I maybe only was in worship for maybe 5 or 10 minutes, but that was good. It was good worship. Sadly, I scared Bear because all of a sudden I started singing, and she was not prepared for that. So she hid out in her kennel while I was worshiping. It makes me wonder if I really should lead worship when the dog runs and hides when I'm singing. But do you let the devil steal your joy? Because if you are unhappy and you can't focus on anything outside of your circumstances, then that's exactly what's happened. You have let the devil steal your joy. And that's why Hannah, when she was rejoicing, she found a way to find honor and strength and success. Count your blessings. When I start to feel those moments where I'm just so discouraged or I feel overwhelmed, and believe me, I get overwhelmed a lot in life sometimes, I just start counting my blessings. God, what is it that I have because of your grace? And it's amazing how my attitude and my life lift and change. Don't let the devil steal your joy. Hannah, Leo, where are you? Hannah is, she's a good story. She's a good story because she reminds me that there is grace in everything, that there is joy in everything, that even when we are desperate for God to do something, we can still trust him. And some of you are going through some storms. I know because I talked to you. Some of you are walking and you're not sure where the next step is or what's going to happen next. Some of you are fighting battles that we don't even know about. Take heart, because joy is coming. You need to choose it. You need to get alone. You need to turn on your worship music, and you just need to choose it. If you got to dance before the Lord, knock yourself out. I am not the best dancer at all. But I'll cut a rug when it's time. When I am overcome, I remember that this is not my home, but also that God has bigger plans and purposes for me than I could ever imagine. I often tell people when I was young, all I wanted was to have 6 kids. I was very specific. I wanted 6 children. And I wanted to be married young so I could enjoy my kids and then enjoy my husband when I was older. I wanted to travel the world. I wanted to be some successful in whatever I did. And then I met Jesus. And I never got married. I never had kids. I do get to travel. But my life is bigger and fuller than what I could imagine as a child. And I have no regret because I choose joy. I choose joy. So I love when we worship and then we leave. It's the equivalent. I was talking to Candace back there about giving candy to the grandchild before they go back to the parents. This is my version of that. So we're just going to sing one more worship song, and then we're going to stack chairs. And Lawrence and whoever else is going to come and get these after we're done. And you can go give your tithes. And they're going to stand at the back so nobody gets out. Yeah? Okay. Sorry, I just want to make sure my stuff is up so that I'm not confused here.